And hello, welcome to the Bigger Truth Show. I am Scott McMahon, and today's just one of those days. On Wednesdays, I have an extra day to prepare because I've been taking Tuesdays off. So the show is Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and so but I still have been preparing right up to the last minute because there's so much stuff coming out on a continuous basis. So I'm going to cover today couple things. One is a story that I'm actually involved in, that there's a trending video of Eric Trump talking about Flynn, and I'm going to share how I'm involved in that and what my interpretation of that is. And then I'm going to do a deep dive that has with some information that surprised me and been kind of shocking about the Van Miller, Van Yanovkin, whatever his name actually is, and Sheriff Bianco, and all of that, and some connections that they have even to each other through a surprise character who won't be too surprising to you. So let's go ahead and dive in here. Give me just a moment. Forgot to link my slideshow, and it's coming up right now. So first, on last Thursday, so 6 days ago, I was in Tulsa and I gave a presentation, and Jackson Lawmeyer and Clay Clark showed up. They showed up an hour early, and Jackson Lawmeyer, who ran for U.S. Senate in 22, and he and Flynn were just like peas in a pod, and just Jackson Lawmeyer said that he was recruited by Flynn to run. Clay Clark told me personally, he said that he actually asked Flynn to ask Jackson Lawmeyer to run, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why not just, why would he have to ask? Why not ask himself? I don't know. It's just those seem like a weird thing to correct me on, but I am going to share just a little clip from the Q&A, and the whole video is going to be, I'm going to send it out to everyone on my Substack here this evening, and I finally got it together and ready to upload, so I'm going to be doing that this evening. And it'll be kind of late, and I got to take my son to wrestling practice first, but this is a clip from it, from the Q&A at the end of Jackson Lawmeyer.
So my question is this. Eric Trump is coming to my church with Alina Habba Monday. He was supposed to be here tonight. That's why we're here. Hurricane happened, which, by the way, all of you are invited to come hear from Eric Trump and Alina Habba, because I'm going to specifically ask Eric on stage here in Tulsa. All you have to do when you come to the church, if you don't have a ticket because we're sold out, that's fine. Say Rhonda's name, and I'll make sure our team lets you in, okay? And
your seating will be in the bathroom, but you're going to make it.
That's Rhonda. I love her. So she's the Tulsa County Republican Party chair, and so he's saying that he's going to ask Eric Trump about my theory. So here he is asking, he's following through on his promise.
There is, in conspiracy land, a whole bunch out there on X, and it's about General Michael Flynn and how General Michael Flynn is a CIA.
And you can see, as soon as he heard Flynn's name, you can see Eric Trump's body language change a little bit. He kind of looked down. You can tell he's just a little disappointed. Let's go on.
PSYOP to undermine Donald Trump and to undermine the MAGA movement. And so I just thought, coming from you, Eric Trump, is General Flynn a deep state plant in the camp?
Listen, I've known General Flynn for a long, long time, and he's been nothing but a total gentleman to me personally, and a friend, and a friend, and a friend to Clay, and a friend to so many other people. And you want to talk about another person that they tried to destroy? They tried to destroy General. I mean,
Okay, so Yeah, he's not answering the question about whether the question was very strange. So he's saying, that Flynn was a CIA plant, or and then he says, is he a tool of the deep state? And he doesn't answer that question. But this is a really, really politically stupid thing for Jackson Lawmeyer to do to the Trump family just 3 weeks before the election. He's asking Eric Trump to pick a side in a base within the Republican Party that Flynn himself has fractured, and that Trump is desperately trying to hold together. And you could hear in the audience how they're heckling and booing and stuff like that uh, when when he just mentions this possibility that Flynn is a deep state plant. And the audience there in Tulsa has been primed for this because they've been told by the lieutenants within this operation what to think about me and Flynn and my being there all last week. So this was very much a dig, not just to me, but to the people who organized it, including Rhonda, who was actually there. Uh, she made a deal, and I haven't heard yet whether Jackson followed up on his end of the bargain, but she made a deal with Jackson that he would go to her event if he would come to the Tulsa County Republican Party and help address postcards. So they're hand addressing a whole bunch of thousands of postcards to send out. And so he said that he would do it. I don't know if he withheld his end of the bargain, but um so he put himself, Jackson Lawmeyer put himself, or he really put Eric Trump in a very uncomfortable position, doing something that any politician would be loath to do, which is to pick a side in a conflict within your own base just weeks before the general election. And that's exactly what Jackson Lawmeyer did. And I would expect actually and we'll see if it happens, but I would expect the Trump's team to protect itself and to protect President Trump even from Jackson Lawmeyer and even Clay Clark as a result of this. So maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But they are having a couple events this week that will be a test of that. There's the Reawaken tour in North Carolina this week. And then I think it's on Friday is this event right here. Let me bring this up. By the way, my merch store, you can get this lovely mini Ivan Raiklin mini me t-shirt, or any other merch here that you see on the screen, or some other stuff. If there's anything that you would like to see that you don't see, or if you have any ideas, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to put up some new designs. That is biggertruth.myshopify.com. So this right here is a Clay Clark event that he has organized with, and that both of them, but especially Jackson was really bragging about it because he started up this Pastors for Trump. And I've talked about how Flynn lieutenants and Flynn people, operatives, run the Trump clubs throughout Florida. And those Trump clubs are, they say they're for Trump, of course, but the things that they actually do, like not get out the vote, they don't do get out the vote. They don't encourage early voting. They don't encourage working the polls. They actually discourage those things. But what they do is they teach people how to hand count ballots. Those are the Trump clubs in Florida. So it's just proof that they are not really for Trump. And so Jackson Lawmeyer runs Pastors for Trump, like Latinos for Trump, which is also a Flynn org. And so they and Clay Clark is really the organizer of this. You can see in the bottom left here, it says for details, additional information, contact Clay Clark. And I think that Clay Clark is supposed to be the MC of the event. And Jackson Lawmeyer talked about how he was bragging that he was going to share the stage with President Trump and Eric Trump and Ben Carson. And so that's just proof that I'm wrong. So we will see. We will see. I'm very anxious to see if that if that happens, or if there's any amount of protection on Trump's team, by Trump's team, of President Trump, from people like Jackson Lawmeyer, who, in his complete and total hubris and effort to try to vindicate himself and vilify me, I have a feeling it's going to come back at him. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. We will see. That's just a little hunch that I have. A little, to me, that really rubbed me wrong when I see that he puts Eric Trump into this position. He's really making himself a priority over Trump's campaign, and even Eric. So we'll see. With that, we're going to move on to the Vem Miller situation. And there's a lot to this story. And if you've looked into it at all, a lot of people have, you're probably pretty confused. I said on Monday's show, I said that I was inclined to maybe believe certain aspects, at least, of Vem Miller's story. And as I've learned more about him, I think I've kind of changed my view about him. I don't find him really credible at all. As I've looked more into his background, I have not been able to see a public testimony. He says that he's born again, but the way that he said it, just he didn't say anything more than that. I'm not seeing any public testimony, which is a really key thing. I'm not saying, you got to do what I do, but if somebody really is born again in Christ, they're going to share their testimony about how it happened. And I don't see where he's done that anywhere. He changed his name as recently as 2022. So just 2 years ago, he legally changed his name. He has a really sordid history with his, and
Way there.
you can see him. This is him right here. He's got a very sordid history with his ex-wife and his children. I don't know if he currently has any parenting time, but for a period of time, at least, the judge ruled that he not get parenting time because the court seemed to believe that he was he was putting his own interests way ahead of theirs. And so I'm going to share this. This was one video that I saw that he just did this in the last 2 days on Frank's Speech. Of course, on Frank's Speech, right? Which is Mike Lindell's thing. And I don't even know who this person is, but she's on the Frank Speech Network. And I think she claims to have been, I think she was some sort of a news person who left the news business because it was too biased and too far left. And so then she goes and she joins Mike Lindell's network, which the company there is not that great, but that's, more power to her. So she posts this, and this is off of her own posting. She shares this. I'm just going to let them here speak for himself.
So it's very interesting. P. Diddy actually owes me $30,000 from 2005 because I'd worked with him before as a.
He said that quickly, so if you didn't hear it, he said P. Diddy. Now, P. Diddy, of course, is under investigation right now with some very serious and very, very severe allegations of massive sexual abuse of children and minors, and really bad, really, really bad stuff. And so he's just putting it out there that P. Diddy owes him $30,000, but it gets worse.
Music video director, and he ripped me off, just like he's ripped off so many people. I mean, the amount of people that I would meet that had songs ripped off from him, including a famous artist like Mace, by the way. He's been very upfront about it, that he wrote most of the hits that P. Diddy had. I mean, this guy was a professional thief. He certainly stole money from me, all verifiable, by not paying me. He's known for doing this. He was quite untouchable for a very long time. And those of us that have been in this business have always thought that this man was protected by the feds. In fact, fact, we know he was protected by the feds for a very long time. And as this information's coming out, we're seeing shades of Jeffrey Epstein in terms of his parties. You know, I've been to a couple of his white parties, by the way, and there's a distinction there between the white parties and the freak offs. The white parties were actually very, I don't know, G-rated, I would say. There wasn't anything crazy happening there. You know, people like Leonardo DiCaprio would go there, and he actually came out, I think, in the last couple of days saying that I never went to the freak offs. I was just at the white parties, and that was a whole different thing. And I could vouch for that because I've been to the white parties. It was a bunch of us wearing white, no orgies, nothing like that. But there was definitely shady stuff happening during those white parties.
Okay, so now he's saying there definitely was shady stuff happening during those white parties. So he said it's G-rated, there's nothing going on, but then he's saying there was shady stuff, and shady stuff, in light of the allegations from multiple victims and witnesses that have come forward, is not just shady. This is not just like stuff that might happen at a high school drinking party. This is like severe illegal activity.
It wasn't out in the open. You know, we've heard stories about basements and homosexual stuff. Well, that was in the main stage. People might have gone downstairs and did some things over there, but that wasn't a.
How does he know that? How does he know that people might have gone downstairs and done shady stuff down in the basement? Okay, so, you know, loose lips sink ships, right? It's just, yeah, there's just something seriously wrong going on. But here's the weird thing is that it's not like sheriff, you know, there's kind of like two sides. I believe the sheriff or I believe Van Miller, and people want to take one side or another. And I talk about this frequently, that we don't live in a black and white world. We live in a gray world. And this is certainly an example of that. The sheriff is really not much cleaner. I mean, we know that Van Miller is really close with the whole Flynn network. He's got pictures with everybody in the Flynn network. And he's close with the county chair in Clark County, who it appears to me is part of the whole Flynn cult too, within Republican parties. You know, I haven't investigated that in enough depth to be super confident about that, but just based on his language and his really full-throated support, he put out a public statement yesterday about how great a guy Van Miller is, and what a patriot he is, and how he's all America first. Which, you know, okay, so let's look at the sheriff, because the sheriff's, you know, he's interesting himself. So this story right here, this is from over a year ago, I think, on The Guardian. And now the story, the headline is "Far Right U.S. Think Tank to Give Award to Extremist Sheriff Leading Disaster Office." Now this is a very, very biased piece. However, there are some material facts within the piece about the sheriff, Chad Bianco, that are pretty interesting and noteworthy. So these are some quotes from the piece itself. We've got, he says that Bianco is a defendant in at least half a dozen lawsuits filed. And again, this is about a year ago. I don't know what the update is. But in at least half a dozen lawsuits filed on behalf of people who died while incarcerated in Riverside County's jail system. In 2022 alone, 18 people incarcerated in their jails died. That's not very good. You know, I don't know what percentage of the jail's inmates that was, but that still seems like a lot for one county jail in 1 year. Okay, so then it says several deputies within his department had been arrested for alleged criminal acts carried out while they're on duty. In September of last year alone, there were 3 arrests. Now, for a police officer to get arrested, they don't do that just, you know, willy-nilly on loose suspicion. I mean, they're going to have a case. That in order for them to arrest one of their own, they've got to know that, okay, yeah, there was definitely something wrong. So, you know, these are allegations, but this is pretty serious. So one of them, Brent Bishop Turnwall, was arrested for being discovered under the influence of and in possession of a drug while on duty. So he's got drugs while on duty at jail. Okay, so yeah, that's not good. It gets even worse. Christian Heidecker was arrested and charged with extorting 4 incarcerated women and sexually assaulting one of them. Okay, this is not good. Jorge Alberto Oseguera Rocha was charged after being arrested with more than 100 pounds of fentanyl in his car. He was allegedly working for a drug trafficking organization. Okay, this quote right here is from a local reporter who I'm sure is on the left and covers him. He says he's really just shitty at his job. He isn't making Riverside County any safer. So, of course, that is somebody who is biased against him. However, this isn't good stuff, but it gets even more interesting. So he's associated with he was a member of the Oath Keepers, and it appears the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA. So let me talk about 2 things with this that are interesting. So there was a data breach in 2021 of the Oath Keepers that went online and to show the Oath Keepers membership. And this was after the Oath Keepers were involved in January 6th, and Stuart Rhodes, who was the founder of the Oath Keepers, or the leader of the Oath Keepers, he's in prison, I think, for 18 years, 16, 18 years. He's got one of the largest sentences. And the date here is really interesting. So this is when he joined, was in 2014. Now, 2014 was a significant year for the Oath Keepers because they did a lot. Stuart Rhodes was at the Bundy Ranch, and he used the Bundy Ranch to grift hard to grow his membership. And so if Bianco joined in 2014, it's likely because of the Bundy Ranch story. And that's going to come more into play here shortly. It's important. So, and then it says that Bianco is also reportedly a supporter of the CSPOA. There's another report that this links to, and you can look up the story, the headline at The Guardian. It is still available as of today, so you can look up this story and you can read it for yourself. There is a link here to the other story where he made some comments that were supportive in general of what the CSPOA stands for. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's a member of the CSPOA. Their membership list is not public, and it hasn't been hacked and leaked like the Oath Keepers was. However, it's very likely that he does belong to the CSPOA. And that's not necessarily, in and of itself, that's not necessarily that doesn't mean that that he agrees with everything that Sheriff Mack does, or that he's completely influenced by him. But there are a lot of sheriffs that do belong to that because it helps them to get elected, because there's a lot of people that believe that the CSPOA is a good thing. And again, that's the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers Association, and it's run by Sheriff Mack, who is no longer a sheriff, but who started it. And there are a lot of interesting connections between the CSPOA and the Flynn Network. And it really starts with Sheriff Mack. Sheriff Mack is both Ivan Raiklin and Sheriff Mack have made positive statements, public statements about each other. And Ivan Raiklin has said on numerous occasions that he's working very closely with Sheriff Mack to try to encourage sheriffs across the country to deputize citizens for his live stream swatting raids of his deep state target list. And he said that in many of his X spaces. And there's that. So even if he is just a member for political reasons, he still probably gets the writings of Sheriff Mack. He puts out a lot of content for his followers, and it's very likely that he reads that, and that's reflected in a lot of his language and the things that he's done, presenting himself as kind of a constitutionalist far right attorney or sheriff. So I want to go into just a little bit of the timeline, and then we're going to get to where this gets really interesting. But Yeah.
It's all going to be speculation about what his intentions were getting there. What
Now, this is from his first press release, the day after, right after he was arrested.
we do know is he showed up with multiple passports with different names, an unregistered vehicle with fake license plate, and loaded firearms. If you're asking me right now, I probably did have deputies that prevented the third assassination attempt. If we are that politically lost, that we have lost sight of common sense and reality and reason, that we can't say that, holy crap, what did he show up with all of that stuff for and loaded guns, and I'm going to be accused of being dramatic. We have a serious, serious problem in this country, because this is common sense and reason. I saw some of you there yesterday. You didn't have guns and fake IDs.
Okay. I love that. Good place to stop. So, I think it's good to keep in mind that Sheriff Bianco here was addressing a group of mainstream media. And so he was getting questions and he was getting a lot of pushback from the left about whether or not this was actually an assassination attempt, because they didn't even the first one that was obvious. It was so obvious that it was an assassination attempt. There were bullets flying that actually hit the president in the face, and they still didn't call it an assassination attempt. So I think it's important to keep in mind who he's speaking to here and what he's actually trying to defend. And when initially, even on Monday, as I was kind of trying to think all this through, I didn't, I thought that it was pretty reckless of him to say this, but I think that as I've continued to think about it and to look at what's going on and the way that Vem Miller is acting even right now, it all kind of, I'm definitely believing the sheriff more and more. I did not believe, I mean, that I was holding the space that maybe, Vem was just a really stupid sovereign citizen guy who makes up his own fake IDs, and that those passports weren't actually passports, but they were just fake IDs, because they do make up fake IDs. I mean, if he made up a fake license plate, which is so stupid. I mean, that just it's like putting a neon sign on your car for police to pull you over. I mean, it's just so it's hard for me to imagine that Vem didn't do this on purpose to get this attention, actually. And I think that that is exactly what he's done. You look at how much he's benefited from this, how he's gotten so much publicity. He's suddenly become a household name for many on the right who had never even heard of him before. This is really given his career a huge jump start. He's gotten tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, new views across Rumble and other platforms, maybe even millions. And this has really given his career a tremendous boost that it didn't have before. So, I mean, you can't show up at an event like this where he was going through. So at this event, and I don't know if this is the case, the Trump events that I've been to, I haven't seen this because I've just parked where everybody parks. So I don't know if there is a VIP parking area in every Trump event, or just some Trump events, but I have heard that they're not uncommon. So, and this VIP parking area, the police, the local police, have an increased presence at that VIP parking area because it's closer to the entrance, and so therefore higher risk, which makes sense, right? So he got through the first checkpoint with his vehicle, and then he was going in to park in the VIP area. And he did, according to the county chair, the Clark County chair, he did have a VIP pass. And there are requirements for, hang on here. Did I include it? No, I didn't get it. But there are requirements for the
I don't know how else to explain it.
there are requirements for VIP people, and they're given a notice beforehand that says in an email that says very clearly what they're to expect. And this is so um Sheriff Bianco actually went onto a podcast where he talked at length, and this is he talked for an hour about the whole thing. But I think in this few minutes he actually explains, and this was I think today, maybe yesterday, but this is very recent. This is with all of the information that he currently has. I think this is a really important piece to see to get kind of his current understanding of the story.
The event, which number one is firearms. So anyone claiming that they had an email that they were able to bring, that they were able to be a VIP, they were also told not to bring guns. Outside of that outside perimeter security position, our person, Mr. Miller, drove to that place. He said he was VIP, so he was allowed to pass. Once you get into the inner security, that was a little bit heightened level of security where we were paying more attention to the vehicles, making sure that you belonged there, making sure that residents, if you got in the wrong line, that we got you out and we got you into your house or at least on the street that you were supposed to be on. As Mr. Miller approached, there's obviously a major problem with his vehicle in that it has a fake license plate that is homemade. And there doesn't, for a law enforcement, there's not a bigger red flag than someone with a fake license plate on their vehicle. The vehicle ended up being unregistered to anyone with a fake plate. So the deputy initiates contact. He starts talking to Mr. Miller. There's a very cordial, I will give Mr. Miller that. He was cordial. He was cooperative. And he was certainly not belligerent or violent or combative in any way. So they have this interaction, and eventually, in addition to the license plate and an unregistered vehicle that obviously is a huge red flag, the deputy locates multiple forms of identification, including multiple passports from different countries with different names. So now we have different IDs, different country passports, fake license plate on a vehicle that's unregistered, and now we then have loaded guns. So this is completely red flag what in the world for anyone with common sense.
Now, I completely 100% agree with that. And I mean, it's so over the top to show up with to show up at an event like that with fake license plate is an advertisement. Like I said, it's like putting a neon sign in your car. Hey, police, please search my vehicle. And he had loaded weapons in the car, which whether he knew it or not, ignorance of the law does not constitute innocence under the law. And it's illegal in California to have loaded weapons in your vehicle. So, he was breaking the law and in multiple ways. And it turned out like his vehicle wasn't even registered to anybody, that he'd never registered his vehicle, and he had a fake license plate on it. And this is common among the sovereign citizen people. They think that the laws just don't apply to them. And you can argue all you want that registration of the vehicle or of anything is unconstitutional, but that still is going to get you in trouble with the law. I mean, if you're going to, I have friends that argue that, and yet they still register their vehicles, and that is the wise thing to do in this country at this time. So, it's hard for me to believe that he didn't want that Van Miller didn't want to be arrested, that he didn't want this to happen. And having the multiple passports, having all of that stuff together, and it appears that he really did. I was Van Miller in his hour and 15-minute long statement. He never really even talked about the passports, and so I was thinking, well, maybe that means that he didn't actually have real passports. Maybe they were just fake IDs that he had created, which sovereign citizen people do, and he even has filed a, let me find it here. So he's definitely in deep with the sovereign citizen thing. This was from a court filing where he is declaring his all caps name deceased. Oh, and I've seen that sovereign citizen people do that too. So he's yeah, he's definitely in deep with that. And um there's clearly a lot more to it. I definitely recommend, and I can link to this whole video. I think that the video with Sheriff Bianco is pretty enlightening, and and at this point, I think he has all of the information, and he would not be um he would not be issuing a correction or anything if or he would not be continuing to go with this story if it were untrue. At least I don't think he would. I mean, he has clearly had the experience of having his own deputies break the law, and they have been, to his credit, they've been charged. So it's not like he prevented them from being charged. Um, so I don't think any sheriff wants that. Wants to knowingly hold up, especially on something that's this public. I don't think he, at this point, he really does need to be truthful, and I think he sees that. So you've got two different sides, which is always interesting to me, saying opposite things. We'll see where all of that goes. But what's even more interesting here is yeah, this right here. I'll share this real quick. These are part of the court orders from his various parts of his divorce. That it looks like it's been in and out of court. It was in and out of court for 6 years or so. This final statement here, the judge says, I therefore request the court. No, this was a petition. I therefore request the court to enter a TRO, temporary restraining order, and to issue a no visitation order. This was the one on the right here is from a judgment, and the court, it says the court spent hours reviewing videos, gives some examples of pretty messed up stuff as far as the way that he actually treated his children on video. It is really, really quite messed up. And um, putting out public videos talking about how his daughter's autistic, has been kidnapped and drugged by his ex's parents, just and putting up before and after pictures of his own children publicly. Like, it's just this is not it's pretty messed up. Claiming that his children's mind is broken, um, and making claims about their mental health being damaged and all of this as they're hiding under a table as he's videoing them. It's really sick stuff. So, and this isn't that long ago, and he claims to be a born again Christian, but I think that he's just making, unless there is a public testimony that I have not seen, and I've looked and I haven't seen it. So if you see that, please direct me to it. But unless there's a public testimony where he is truly repenting of, the way that he's treated his children, the way that he's treated his ex-wife, and all, a pattern of lies and misstatements. And also, I don't think that the sovereign citizen stuff and trying to live outside of the law is in any way in concert with someone who's trying to live out you know a biblical life. And God clearly calls us to respect our governing authorities even if they're tyrants. So I think that I don't really believe, even though I said on Monday that I found his story credible, I really don't believe anything about him. And and a lot of that is linked to this. So we've got he is clearly so we've got Vem clearly linked um to Ivan. We've got Sheriff Bianco is even linked to Ivan. And let me show you this. This is Sheriff Bianco's ex, which he doesn't seem to use a lot. However, he has 14 followers, only 14 people that he follows. And Ivan Raiklin is one of those. And like I said, he's also involved with the CSPOA. Sheriff Mack, who runs that, is close with Ivan Raiklin. So there is some, there's some togetherness there. And, there, at least there's some influence, I would say, between Ivan Raiklin and Sheriff Bianco, which is, just crazy. So we've got Ivan Raiklin is involved in both sides of this, which makes the whole thing completely, it's an op. The whole thing is an op. So we got Ivan Raiklin on both sides, but but there's there's more. They're all three of them, the Secretary of Retribution, Ivan Raiklin, and Sheriff Bianco. All three of them have connections with Cliven Bundy. Now, Sheriff Bianco's are the weakest, but we have this, that he allegedly, and according to documents that were linked and credible, that he joined the Oath Keepers in 2014. And it is extremely likely that that was in response to Stuart Rhodes, who is the director of the Oath Keepers, being at the Bundy Ranch, and when everything went down there. And if you're not familiar with what happened in 2014, Cliven and his son Ammon and their whole family. Cliven has a cattle ranch in Nevada, and he was using federal land, or there's a conflict whether it was state land or federal land, and that's kind of what a lot of this is about. He was using land that the BLM thought was their land to graze his cattle on, and he believed that it was not federal land, and he was using that, that you're supposed to pay the BLM for the use of land for grazing rights and or mineral rights. If you want to, you can get a mining claim on BLM land, and it's very inexpensive. And if nobody else has a claim on that piece of land, and it's not expensive to get the grazing rights either. It's far cheaper than buying the land or paying taxes even on land that you own. And so, but instead of doing that, he was just grazing on this land that the BLM claimed was theirs. And so they came in and said, you can't do that. And it became this huge standoff. And it's not something, I did not follow it at the time. I haven't really read a ton about it. So I don't have the whole story. I'm talking to a couple people who know much more about it firsthand. And I actually had Eric Parker on my show several months ago, who was there. And so I'm hoping to maybe revisit this with somebody that's more knowledgeable about what really happened there in 2014. However, there's a lot of energy around this, and what ended up happening was there was a standoff, and it was an armed standoff between citizens that came to support the Bundys and the BLM and the FBI, and they were pointing guns at each other. Fortunately, nobody fired a shot, but there was this armed standoff. And but Sheriff Mack here really escalated things when and from what I understand, Sheriff Mack was not involved in the planning. He claimed to have been involved in the strategic planning of the whole event, but he came on the news. He just showed up out of nowhere, got on the news there near the Bundy Ranch, and he said this.
We were actually strategizing to put all the women up at the front. If they're going to start shooting, it's going to be women that are going to be televised all across the world getting shot by these rogue federal officers.
Okay, so that is Sheriff Mack saying that just like the Palestinians do, putting women in front and having the women get shot first. And there are even more incendiary quotes that are attributed to him, but I haven't been able to find video. This is the only video that I've been able to find online of that statement. But that really hurt the Bundys big time, making that statement. And he was not involved. That was not part of their plan, from what I understand from people who were there. And but it got a whole lot of media attention, and it really raised the temperature, just like this whole thing on both sides. I even if the whole thing disappears, it will have succeeded in raising the temperature. And but it gets more interesting. So I'm pointing to this because Vem Vem just produced Vem Miller just produced something, a documentary, very conveniently, and it was released less than a month ago. And he co-produced it with Mindy Robinson, who was a former porn star turned Flynn Network podcaster, and the two of them produced this documentary about the Bundy thing, and claiming that this man, who I'm not sure if he's even an attorney, that was working on a lawsuit, and this guy, he was a sovereign citizen type guy named Mike Little, that they claimed was poisoned. They even claim in the documentary that he's poisoned by an NPR reporter, and uh, which is insane. I think that I'm surprised that NPR hasn't sued him yet, and maybe they will now that maybe they just didn't know about it yet. But I'm sure they will know about it now because of all of this. But so it's a 40-minute documentary. You can watch it, and it's inciting. It's all about raising the temperature, getting people emotionally charged, and it gets even better. Just a few weeks ago, Vem brought Ivan Raiklin out to the Bundy Ranch, and so again, we've got Vem, Ivan Raiklin, and Sheriff Bianco, much more on the perimeter or on the periphery, not directly involved, which is the reason why Ivan Raiklin, I think, is really taking Vem's side, and kind of he's been very confrontational on social media towards Sheriff Bianco, and kind of leading a lot of anger towards law enforcement over this. But we've definitely got Vem and Ivan Raiklin very much involved with Cliven Bundy. And I'm going to share a clip here there's an hour and 15-minute interview or video of conversation between Ivan Raiklin and Cliven Bundy. I've watched about not quite half of it, but this was a really key clip right here.
But more or less just misconduct for the government attorneys.
You got all the names of these guys?
Oh yeah, they're all listed.
Do I need to add them to my list?
Well, I don't know what you'd do with them, but you probably could.
I would conduct the most peaceful and patriotic, legal and moral and ethical actions that they've ever experienced in their life. That's what I would like to do.
Well, there's...
Okay, so I mean, if you've been following Ivan Raiklin at all, you've been following my reporting at all, you know that Ivan Raiklin saying that, he does not mean peaceful. He does not mean constitutional. He says patriotic, whatever that means. That's in I would say the same way that Hitler or Stalin would have meant, or Pol Pot would have meant patriotic. And he certainly is not meaning ethical, because what he's advocating for is extrajudicial vigilante policing and justice. He wants mob rule.
A couple of things. We really don't have much of a justice system left in this country.
I never said we did.
And so when you start trying to play their game in their courts, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, I never said that we would play it in court. I said that I want to provide them the most legal, moral, ethical, peaceful, and patriotic experience ever that they've faced in their entire life. Maybe that humanity has ever witnessed.
Well, that sounds good.
Okay. If that's not disturbing, it's disturbing to me. I imagine, if you've been following his work or my work, if you've been paying attention to what Ivan Raiklin is trying to do, I think you'll probably find that pretty disturbing. And the reason why I think they're trying to bring the Bundys back into this is because it's exactly what Ivan Raiklin was trying to do. And I think I believe now absolutely that what has happened here is this was fabricated by Vem Miller on purpose with Ivan Raiklin's very clear help. This was not a freak event. I think that Ivan Raiklin was actually involved in the plan to make sure that this would happen. And who knows I whether or not Ivan Raiklin or Sheriff Mack was involved in whispering into Chad Bianco's ear to get him to call this an assassination attempt. I don't think that they had to. I think that the media was doing enough at that press conference to get him to do that. And you know that this was a very clear effort to create publicity, in my view, specifically for the Bundy thing, to draw people's attention by and to raise the temperature and draw people's attention to the Bundy Ranch, which was exactly what Ivan Raiklin is talking about. I mean, everything that he's talking about is he's wanting people to get their firearms and act like they are Captain America. I want to go back to this and I just want to freeze the frame here at the beginning of this video.
Wow.
All right. Right here. This picture right here. This is famous footage right here of Eric Parker was, there were camera crew all around him. He was up on the bridge, and down in the wash was all the people. And he was just deeply concerned about what was going on there. He never pulled a trigger, but for lining up there, and he said that there were snipers pointed at him. And hopefully I can get him to come on to talk about this. But where this ends is absolutely not an increase in our freedoms.
We were actually strategizing.
What Ivan Raiklin is trying to get people to believe is that we can have justice and freedom if we engage in retribution, in mob retribution, vigilante retribution. And that is the only way you can agree with him is if you are completely ignorant of all of history. Because this will end if anyone actually listens to his efforts at inciting and allows themselves to be radicalized to the point of violence by him. And I think that there's actually thousands that are ready there, that he's moving closer and closer. I've heard conversations on X Spaces where people have expressed doubt about going to violence, and he's argued for it. And I think that Ivan Raiklin can be best understood if you look at what the FBI did in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. If you look at what those FBI assets were doing and how they were speaking to the handful of people that they got completely stoned on weed and drunk and these were people who had no hope and purpose in their lives, and they gave them a purpose. They gave them free weed. They gave them access to guns and everything else. And they really put them in the position where all they had to do is just say, yes, okay. They didn't have to even come up with the plan themselves. All they had to do is just say, yes, okay. And then that yes, okay was enough to get them arrested. And that is exactly what Ivan Raiklin is working on here. His speech falls far beyond the bounds of protected speech, and yet they're not doing anything against him. If I were to say the things that Ivan Raiklin is saying, I can guarantee you the FBI would be knocking on my door. And Merrick Garland has held several press conferences over the last month about the threat of MAGA extremist domestic terrorism and the threat against our election systems, and the threat against the FBI and federal agents, and he's whining and complaining about this, but he could shut it down in a heartbeat. There's a handful of it's just a handful of people. They're all within Flynn's orbit. There's just a handful of people that they could just shut it down in a heartbeat, and yet they don't, because they want them there, because I think that they're feds. They're working on behalf of the interests of federal agents, whether it's within the DOJ or the Department of Justice, or whether it's Department of Justice, Department of Defense, the intelligence community, which is within the Department of Defense. I don't know, but it's you know, it's clear that they are that they're being enabled by our government, and what they're doing here is extremely dangerous. This whole story, about this supposed third assassination attempt, it's very clear that Van Miller wasn't intending to actually assassinate the president. I don't believe that that's true, but I do believe that 100% that he intended to get arrested and to be labeled an assassin. I think he clearly wanted that. He was completely prepared for all of this publicity, and the whole Flynn network has galvanized around him and rallied around him, and it was all very well rehearsed. So another question is, so what is it that they don't want us to look at? They want us to look at this, so what is it that they don't want us to look at? And that's something that we really need to figure out. So you could say that it's whatever they're doing with our elections. I know that here in Michigan and Detroit and in Flint, at least about 40% of all early ballots are already turned in, which is statistically that's never happened. And that there was a RNC, Michael Watley with the RNC did get a legal victory here in Michigan requiring signature verification, but it also, as far as I understand it, it leaves it up to the local clerk, and the local clerk may or may not actually enforce that or validate signatures. So, and verify signatures. So the likelihood that that's actually happening in Detroit, that they're actually doing anything other than just opening those envelopes in Detroit, it's pretty low that there's any signature verification in Detroit or in Flint. The good news there is that there's not a ton. We're not talking about a ton of ballots yet in those two cities, and there's other big cities too, in inner city areas where it's high also. It shouldn't be that the inner cities are dramatically higher, like 30% higher than every place else, 30 to 40% higher. It should not be. So maybe it's that. Maybe that's what they're wanting us to look away from. Maybe they're wanting us to look away from what's happening in North Carolina. And maybe there's something else coming. It is October. We're right now smack dab in the middle of October. Maybe it is this whole thing. If something comes out, I know I saw that Harmeet Dillon is now looking into and is reaching out to the supposed whistleblower that was a victim of child sexual abuse by Tim Waltz. So, if Trump's team comes out with that, and if Harmeet Dillon investigates that and she goes public with that, I think that would be a very credible story. And maybe that's one of the things that they're just trying to keep us from looking at. I don't know. But clearly we are in an information war, and that's really the bottom line. And so I hope that this is helpful to you, and as it's been surprising even to me to examine this and see what is really going on, what's the story behind this story. And there is for the full, I will be publishing it on my Substack tonight, I promise. I'll start uploading as soon as I'm done recording here. And so I will be publishing my full presentation from last week. That was the hostile presentation from and I'll share the whole story about how Jackson Lawmeyer, Clay Clark, and all of the other lieutenants, not all of them, but a lot of the lieutenants within the Oklahoma Republican Party came even after they did everything they could to discourage all of their followers from coming, but they themselves came. And so I will share that. I don't think that it was of the presentations that I did. I don't think it was my best presentation because there was so much pressure. However, uh, I'm, I, I didn't take any crap, and I laid down. I I confronted them very directly and very publicly, and so I'm happy about that. I didn't pull any punches. I did not say anything that I wanted to say. I definitely don't feel that there's anything that I wish I would have said that I didn't. And also I don't think there's anything that I wish I wouldn't have said. So I just praise God for all of that, and I spent a lot of time in prayer leading up to that, and so just I'm especially that he would help me to just give me the words and to be truthful. So we I serve a really amazing God, and my continuous prayer is that in my weakness, that His strength would be evident. And so I feel that He answered that prayer, especially on Thursday in Tulsa last week. So I will be sharing that, and it's the great thing about it, I think, is that it really lays out all of the story um, of the infiltration within the state parties, what Flynn has done kind of throughout much of his career leading in the military, and a lot of the people that he's associated with, what he did during Crossfire Hurricane, what he did allegedly after the 2020 election, what he's done within the state parties, and further, what he is doing now within Christian churches, which is the thing that I feel most motivated to and most concerned about of anything that he's doing right now. So that is that. I thank you very much for your attention and your support as always. And you can reach me on X at Bigger Truth. My Substack is biggertruth.substack.com. If you'd like to support my work, I would very much appreciate it. $5 a month gives you access to all of my archives and occasional members only content. And so, yeah, that's just, it's a great way to support me and to kind of get on the inside, kind of get the inside scoop of what's going on. So, till next time, tomorrow at 3 o'clock will be the next show.